Today we're up against a similar yet different threat, a proposal that fails to extend vital improvements made to refundable tax credits, including the child tax credit and the earned income tax credit. Let's take a look at what this would do. If the House fails to extend these crucial improvements, a single mother of 2 children who works full-time and earns a minimum wage will receive a tax credit of just $173 instead of the current $1,725. When you're trying to support 3 people on $14,000 a year, that extra $1,500 could be the difference between having heat in the winter and having your children freeze, between having food, nourishing food to put on the table for your children and not being able to feed them. And at the same time, lawmakers who are proposing these drastic cuts for working families are calling for tax breaks for the super wealthy. It's unjust, and it's plain unchristian.
There's nothing in the Bible about marginal tax rates, but if you would allow current benefits to lapse for the top 2%, it's a lot of money. It's $830 billion in additional government revenue over the next 10 years. That's equivalent to $1 million every day since Jesus was born. So as we do just the arithmetic, it looks to us like if you take away that $830 billion from our public revenue, it's almost inevitable that we will end up cutting programs and policies that provide help and opportunity to poor people.
As we gather here in our nation's capital this morning, few, if any, of the families who will be impacted most severely by the upcoming House vote right here are going to be present to speak out on behalf of their children or their neighbors. But if they were here in full force, they would remind us that they still believe that we're a nation of compassion and justice, a nation of hope and opportunity, and a nation that does not turn its back on its citizens, especially those who are in greatest need. So today, on behalf of these neighbors, I urge our lawmakers to do right by our families, to do right by our children, and to reject the notion that continuing to provide tax breaks for the wealthiest 2% of our citizens at the expense of support for our most vulnerable is in the best interest of the United States of America. We're here to declare that taking this path is not only misguided and immoral, but violates our most basic duty to love our neighbor as we love ourselves.
I'd like to tell you a story about Billy. Now, this is me, this is Sister Diane from the bus, and this is Billy. He's a father of 2 kids. He and his wife moved from Chicago to Milwaukee, no offense to Chicago, because he wanted to get his kids in a better situation. His older son, who was turning 13, was getting a little interested in some gang activity, and he didn't think it was good for him. He got a transfer from his job, and when he got to Milwaukee, he worked really hard for a couple of years at his full-time job. And then in the recession, he got cut back. He's working now in a part-time job. It's the most his employer can do. But this employer has said they want to keep him on, but they just can't pay him more. And he and his wife realized that they had enough money to put either a roof over their head or food on the table. So they chose a roof, because every night they go to St. Benedict's dining room in downtown Milwaukee in order to feed the kids a wholesome meal. They'll be really excited when school starts again, because right now they're having a really hard time making the other 2 meals for the kids. Billy told me, you know, when you're a parent, it's okay if you only eat twice a day. But when you're a kid, especially 2 boys, they really need to eat. Billy and his wife have qualified for EITC, the Earned Income Tax Credit, and for the Child Tax Credit. To cut them off is immoral, is wrong.
A budget is a moral document. That phrase was coined by the faith community. It's now a refrain in all the debates about But in this week's vote, perhaps today, we'll see one more example of the priorities and the principles of the broader Republican budget and how they apply to the rich and the poor. And because of that, many in the faith community have to conclude that this Republican budget is an immoral document.
I have no doubt that if God has a bias, it is for the single mother struggling to care for her children, the elderly resident of a skilled nursing facility, surviving on Social Security and the grace of strangers, the fatherless teenager wondering how college might be possible. In the name of the God of love and justice, in the name of patriotism, deeper by any measure than the callous insensitivity of those whose proposals would punish decent, hardworking Americans of every color and religion, we say no to tax policies that reward the wealthiest 2% of us and threaten the security of the 15 million families and the 36 million children who depend on these tax credits.